Recently I've been talking with a friend who just had a race, and we were talking about the fine art of peaking for your race. So that's the topic today, peaking for your race. Now, I like to use the term peaking versus taper. I still tend to say taper a lot just because it's so much in the vernacular of running. But really, you're not trying to taper so much as you're trying to peak. You're trying to make sure that come race day that your body is really ready to perform. Now, in my experience, most people do too little during their peaking period, and doing too little tends to end up in legs that just don't want to go the way you want them to go. So you want to make sure that you're peaking, because really what you're trying to do here is you're keeping yourself really sharp. And doing too little or backing off too much on intensity isn't going to make you sharp. You feel like you're resting, and you are, but then your legs aren't ready to go. But you want to hit that race line, ready to pound it and to snap. So the rule is you want to reduce your volume during peaking, but not for all distances, but not intensity. And too often people will reduce the volume too much. They'll reduce the intensity too much, as I already said, and they end up with legs that aren't really ready to go. So how much you peak is going to depend upon the race. It also depends a lot upon you and your experience, and that's going to matter, but that's a whole nother video. So for a full marathon, it is typically 3 weeks of peaking. For a half marathon, it's more like 7 to 10 days. And for a 5K, it might only be a couple of days. And the reason the marathon is so much bigger is because the rigors of marathon training are far different, as well as the rigors of doing the marathon are far different. When you go down to, say, the 5K, chances are you're doing nowhere near the volume that you do in running that you would do for a marathon versus the 5K. And likewise, a 5K is going to take you, depending upon your speed, it might be 20 minutes, it might be 30 minutes. It's a heck of a lot different for the marathon. So as a general rule of thumb, for the full marathon, you'll reduce your volume the first week by about 30%, and then a total of 60% the next week. So you usually have some fairly significant drops in volume for the marathon. For the half, though, it's relatively minor. There really isn't a guideline that says what your percentages would be. But I can tell you, if you're running, say, 35 miles a week on average, you might drop down to maybe 30 miles a week for the half marathon, but you really don't drop the volume very much. Again, as I said, the rigors of half marathon training are very different than they are with marathon training. And with a 5K, there might be little or none. You might see only some mileage drop in the couple of days before the 5K, maybe none at all. A lot depends upon you. Now, one of the rules during peaking is no new stress. That's not to say that you shouldn't be running fast or doing harder work because you reduce volume, not intensity. What do I mean by no new stress? So let's say, for the sake of example, let's say that your current lactate threshold is about a 7:45 pace. And let's say during training, you've been running, 20, 25 minutes at a lactate threshold, and your body is accustomed to doing that. That doesn't mean that during the peaking period you should go out and do 30 minutes because you just added more stress. You're doing an intensity for a longer period of time than your body's accustomed to. We want to do that during training. That's how we adapt and improve. We don't want to do that during peaking. On the other hand, going out for 20 minutes or maybe even the 25 isn't a problem, because even though there's some intensity in that run, it's not new stress. It's something your body has already been accustomed to. That's what I said. We want to reduce volume, but we don't reduce the intensity. We want to keep that in. Now, generally speaking, the week of the race, even the marathon, is going to be some of the fastest running that you do. Now, fastest doesn't mean necessarily fast, but generally you're going to be running faster, but on reduced volume, so that you can really get accustomed to that. But the purpose of that faster running is, again, you want your legs ready to go. What do I mean by faster? Let's say a marathon, for example. Let's say that your goal pace is 8 minutes, and you've been doing your long runs at 8 minutes. You're probably doing your long runs at more like 8:45 or 9. You're probably going to do some of your easy runs more like 8:30, 8:15, closer to that goal pace, but for very short periods of time. It's nothing that you're doing long, because what we're trying to do is not get the body to adapt to things. We're trying to get those legs to be firing and ready to go fast. So in short, don't taper, peak, reduce volume, not intensity. Look to make yourself sharp and go nail it on race day.